Does he agree with me and Reform UK that every single illegal migrant coming to this country should be detained, not allowed to claim asylum and then deported?
Prime Minister's questions turned into a heated confrontation as Lee Anderson challenged Keir Starmer over illegal immigration and a shocking criminal case involving a vulnerable young victim. The exchange quickly expanded into a wider debate on border security, asylum policy, and public safety, making it one of the most controversial moments of the session. Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to Britain Talks Daily. Now let's get into today's debate.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Ashfield, 4 workers, including 2 nurses, were kicked out of their HMO, and Serco put 4 illegal migrants in this HMO. One of these illegal migrants was a Pakistani national. He went on to rape a young girl, a vulnerable young girl, on a park in Ashfield. He's now doing 14 years in prison. This was a monster allowed into this country by this awful government. But if a Prime Minister is really serious about protecting young women and girls, does he agree with me and Reform UK that every single illegal migrant coming to this country should be detained, not allowed to claim asylum and then deported?
Lee Anderson begins with a serious case from Ashfield describing how illegal migrants were housed in accommodation previously occupied by local workers. He then refers to the conviction of an individual for the rape of a vulnerable young girl, using the case to argue for much stricter immigration enforcement. Anderson concludes by asking whether every person who enters the UK illegally should be detained and removed, making border security the central issue of his question.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the fact that after net migration reached almost 1 million under the party opposite, we brought it down by 82%. On the asylum system, which he references, now asylum decisions are made at record levels, the backlog is down, removals are up 41%, and we're closing asylum hotels. They lost control of our borders. Now small boat crossings are coming down, and we deported 70,000 people with no right to be here. He likes to ask questions. He should be asking some questions of the leader of his party sitting next to him. He received £5 million in crypto from a crypto billionaire and then privately lobbied the Bank of England on digital currencies. So did their leader carry out lobbying paid? Why did he keep his £5 million gift secret? And are they happy with their leader earning £20,000 an hour flogging gold bullion? They need to ask the questions across their benches, but they never do.
Rather than directly answering Lee Anderson's proposal, Keir Starmer highlights the government's immigration record. He argues that net migration has fallen significantly, asylum backlogs have been reduced, removals have increased, and the use of asylum hotels is declining. Starmer then shifts onto the offensive, criticising Reform UK's leadership over political donations and financial transparency. This response illustrates a common PMQs tactic, where ministers answer criticism by defending their record while questioning the credibility of their opponents.
Cole Lockhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week in Northern Ireland, a former member of this House was convicted for the most horrific child sexual abuse against 2 girls. I want to commend the victims for their extraordinary bravery in coming forward. It was their courage secured a conviction, and I have no doubt that their resolve will help others find their voice. No matter an abuser's power or status, there can be no hiding place for someone who would take the safety or would steal the innocence of young children. Mr. Speaker, thousands of vulnerable young women in Rotherham, Oldham and across the UK were subjected to organised child sexual abuse and exploitation. In many cases, it was Pakistani heritage grooming gangs responsible, while institutions looked the other way. Before leaving office, the Prime Minister has the ability and opportunity to leave a legacy. Will he ensure that the promised statutory rape gang inquiry is delivered so the truth can finally be told, and that those responsible are held to account, and that no child's safety is ever sacrificed ever again for racial sensitivities?
Minister.
Can I thank her for raising the case in Belfast that concluded last week, and, like her, salute the courage of the victims to come forward. It must have taken extraordinary courage. It does in every single one of these cases, but particularly when you've got powerful people and institutions, it takes even more courage to do so. And so we salute them for their own acts, but also because it will, I hope, have helped others to see that if you do come forward, you will be believed and justice can be done, notwithstanding the difficulties. On grooming, we have set up the inquiry, and it's very important it goes wherever the evidence should take it, and that's an absolute guiding principle of the inquiry.
The discussion returns to child protection as another MP raises the issue of grooming gangs and calls for a statutory inquiry. The question references historic failures by institutions to protect vulnerable children and asks whether the promised inquiry will proceed. Starmer responds by praising the courage of victims who came forward and confirms that the inquiry has been established, stating that it should follow the evidence wherever it leads without exception.
Mr. Speaker, the wars in Ukraine and Iran show us how seriously we must take the threat of missiles and drones hitting our country. Our national security requires the best possible missile defence system, including Royal Navy destroyers. But the funding in his plan for this falls dangerously short. Yet the Prime Minister has rejected our proposals for defence bonds, which were used in the past to rearm our country. So can the Prime Minister tell us why has he chosen to leave our country so vulnerable to missile attack?
Prime Minister.
Can I first join him on his comments about the Scotland team, the Scotland fans, and wish England well? I'm not sure about his gag. He was getting a bit better the other week, but he's gone back down. I'm afraid that one is a red card. But, Mr. Speaker, our defence investment plan gives our country what we need to fight now and into the future, the capability that's been assessed through the strategic review. Bonds, which we looked at very closely, are simply borrowing by another name, and we are already borrowing in a way which requires us to spend £1 in every 10 on servicing the interest on that. And I would gently point out, before he carries on with any criticism of our plan, that he sat in a cabinet that cut defence spending by 22%.
Attention then shifts from immigration to national security as Sir Ed Davey questions the government's missile defence strategy. He argues that Britain's current plans leave the country vulnerable and proposes defence bonds as a way of increasing investment. Starmer rejects the proposal, saying it would simply increase borrowing under another name. He instead defends Labour's defence investment plan while accusing previous governments of significantly reducing defence spending.
The Prime Minister knows that our defence bonds are within his own fiscal rules, that he's had advice from his own team that he should adopt them, and I hope the Right Honourable Member for Makerfield will listen. But, Mr. Speaker, I have another concern that I think the Prime Minister will share. The rising tide of racist violence and hate that we're seeing in our country, and the way it's being incited and normalised, including, I'm afraid, by some members of this House. I was talking to a British friend of Indian ancestry who told me how reform activists came to her door and said that if they get into power, she and her family will have their passports seized and their citizenship revoked. Does the Prime Minister agree that racism has no place in our country? And will he join me in condemning anyone who is stoking it?
Can I thank him for raising this? It is really important because our politics is becoming more diverse and racism and intolerance is permeating everywhere. And we have to deal with it. Because it's tearing our societies apart. It is keeping good people away from politics because they don't want to be involved in it. And it should be called out by every single person who's a politician at any level in this country. But, Mr. Speaker, I say this looking at the plaque to Joe Cox, and of course we've got David Amos behind me too. We had a Joe Cox 10-year reminder that it was 10 years ago, just a week or so ago, that we lost Jo, and I had a reception in Downing Street with her parents and other close friends and relatives of hers. We read out the words of Jo again. The very sad thing is, I was not able to say that in the 10 years since Jo's death, things have got better, because sadly, they've got worse. That's on us to fix, all of us to fix, every single member of this House, whatever their party in. And anybody who flames it should be absolutely ashamed of themselves.
Alex Ballinger.
The final exchange focuses on racism and political discourse. Sir Ed Davey raises concerns about increasing racial hostility and asks the Prime Minister to condemn those encouraging intolerance. Starmer agrees, warning that abusive political rhetoric discourages good people from entering public life. He reflects on the murders of MPs Jo Cox and David Amess, arguing that all political leaders share a responsibility to lower tensions and protect democratic debate from hatred and intimidation. Today's Prime Minister's questions covered several of the most challenging issues currently facing the United Kingdom, from illegal immigration and public safety to child protection, national defence, and the tone of political debate. Lee Anderson used a disturbing criminal case to argue that Britain's immigration system requires much tougher enforcement, calling for anyone entering the country illegally to be detained and deported. His intervention reflected growing public concern about border security and the consequences of failures within the immigration system. Keir Starmer responded by defending the government's record, pointing to falling net migration, increased removals, and progress in reducing the asylum backlog. Rather than accepting Anderson's proposal directly, he sought to demonstrate that Labour's existing policies are delivering results while questioning the credibility of Reform UK's leadership. As the session continued, MPs also debated the importance of investigating grooming gang scandals, strengthening Britain's defence capabilities, and tackling the rise of racism and political intimidation. As with many Prime Minister's questions, both government and opposition presented very different interpretations of the same issues. Some viewers will feel that stronger immigration measures are needed to improve public safety, while others may believe the government's current approach is already producing measurable progress. Ultimately, Parliament will continue to debate these questions, and the public will decide which arguments they find most convincing. What do you think? Should Britain adopt tougher immigration policies, or is the current approach the right balance between border security and legal obligations? Let us know your views in the comments below. If you enjoyed this analysis, please like this video, subscribe to Britain Talks Daily, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of PMQs, Westminster debates, and the biggest stories in UK politics. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.